situation you don't realize. So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Welcome to the Remedy Podcast. This podcast is a project of WEBB, a North Carolina nonprofit that works to increase wealth for Black businesses through connection, network, and opportunity. Our host is Stephanie Terry, the Executive Director of WEBB, and our co-hosts are Associate Director Rinnie and myself, Mashallah Salaam. I am the Media and Production Specialist. In this podcast, we hope to bring consciousness to the racial divide and speak on emerging new narratives about race. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you will enjoy the podcast.
Hey everyone.
Hey Stephanie.
Hey Rinnie. Hey Mashallah.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Great. It's podcast Saturday.
We had some winter snow.
We had snow.
Yesterday, I was like, it was kind of anticlimactic. I mean, they were like, oh, we're going to declare a state of emergency and all this stuff. And then you wake up and there's just a little bit of snow on the ground and it's sunny and there's no wind or, no rain, no sleet. I was like, did they really declare a state of emergency for the little bit of snow that we got?
Oh, speak for yourself. We got a lot.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we were completely covered out here. Like, we can make snowmen.
It's a lot. I mean, there's like an inch or so on the ground, but still, is it a state of emergency? Isn't that supposed to be reserved for when, like, power is out and trees are down and...
Well,
it sounds like North Carolina, so...
Rinnie, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Wyoming. Our winters were like 5-6 months long.
Okay.
We would spend weeks out at the ranch. I grew up on a ranch. We would spend weeks out at the ranch with like being snowed in.
Well, you know how it is in Kakalaki. They don't have the plows. Do you remember the last snow that we had that was more than 6 inches? It was in I was living in Chapel Hill and people were stranded. They called it Snowmageddon. Do you remember that?
Do you remember what year?
It was probably like 8 years ago, not 7 years ago. I don't think North Carolina has the equipment and stuff. Yeah, you remember that? When people were abandoning their cars and we could, like, it was like, oh, we're just going to get a little snow. And
I remember that. The snow came down so fast. Like, I had no idea it would come down that fast. I don't think anybody did.
But that was like, that's a state of emergency.
But they didn't call it a state of emergency then because they were like, oh, we're just only getting 5 inches of snow. So I think they err on the side of caution now because people were so mad. Like, people were stuck on 40. And like, I remember I abandoned my car. I had to spend the night at Amani's house. So I think that's where it comes from, Rinnie. I guess if you're an elected official, you're like, oh no, y'all not going to crucify me.
I remember being in Chicago and like one winter, it was like maybe 20 inches of snow fell. The whole city shut down and the mayor was under attack. Like, it was his fault.
Yes.
The city shut down because there was 20 to 30 inches of snow. It was his fault. And, that the trains weren't running and, it's like, it's not his fault. No one can be prepared.
That's what happens. So I think they're like, we're ready. We got it covered. It's a state of emergency. And anything that happens, we're on it.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness we were close by home. Like, we were able to walk. It was a journey, though. And we had bags and bags of groceries. And I felt like I was in one of those movies where you taking like a long journey through the snow.
I remember that. Yeah, but fortunately, it's been snowing like on the weekend, overnight, and then we're in a pandemic, so it's not like everybody's like rushing all around.
Yeah.
So anyway, so enough of the snow. I went out and played in the snow with the broom. Now, one more last thing about the snow. Has anyone ever eaten snow cream?
What?
No. Snow cream.
I won't eat snow.
Yes.
I feel like
Yeah,
it's probably pretty toxic because of whatever environments or, what's in the environment.
Yeah, well, people eat it. It's just, I think it's like milk and sugar, like canned milk
snow?
and snow. Yeah.
Like condensed
Yeah.
milk?
You can use condensed milk. I've never had it, but I think it's a Southern thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, never had.
Yeah. So anyway, so what are we talking about today, Rinnie?
So part of our adventure with entrepreneurs is that we are in the process of beginning to do coaching and mentorship with people. And we have been doing one-on-one interviews with all of our entrepreneurs in our program. And this week we were doing an interview with Mashallah. And we were talking about coaching and mentoring. What does that mean? And I said, it would have been really nice for me when I was like 23, 24, 25 to know that coaches were an option. I have no idea, this whole world of coaching. I'm like 51 and it just seems like it just opened up to me in the last couple of years to even consider like having a coach or being a coach. And I feel like it would have been really nice to have had that as an option back when I was like Mashallah's age. Like you're 25, is that right, Mashallah?
Yes.
And so we thought we'd talk about it a little bit in terms of identity. Like, what does that mean? Like,
and let me just pick that up. Here in the West, we call it coaching, right? And then of course we've, monetized it and made it a business. But in indigenous cultures, they call it mentors. They call it mentorship, and they call it like relationships with, elders with the youth. And it's just so much missing from this culture. It just really is, because in fact, there's an incredible book called The Healing Ritual Community something, but his last name is Some. And he's an African shaman, and he's from, I think, West Africa. And he really parallels how different the culture is from, being West African, growing up in his village, and then also doing some schooling over here in, I think it was London, and then in the United States, about how different the definitions of community, the purpose for just people, like how important it is to find your purpose, how that purpose is a part of making the community wider, healed, and a part of what the community needs. And then like how the youth and elders, like how we just have a complete different acclamation about the purpose of elders and the relationship between elders and youth and mentors. And when I was reading it, it's just so rich. There's just such a deficit here around purpose and identity and place here I'm just going to talk about, the United States. Especially, and we used to have it even in African American culture. We used to have it way more than we do now. Our culture has been disintegrated around all this materialism. I don't like it. Let me just say that. This is what I don't like. I don't like that. If you don't know what you want to do by the time you're 20, then something's wrong with you. And then if you don't buy your house by the time you're 30, then you're a failure. And if you haven't figured out, your purpose in life, and then by the time you're 50, you're over the hill, or 60, you're over the hill, and then you have no more worth. Who made this crap up? Let me get off my soapbox.
No, I think there's something about our culture is that we kind of just set our youth adrift. It's like they go through high school and then we send them to college, and yes, they're getting an education. But as far as like the soul work they need to do to know who they are, I've heard of like kids that take gap years to kind of like spend a year thinking about who they are in relationship to the world, do better in college than kids that are just thrust right into college, like right from high school. And, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, I went to a technical college for 2 years. It was really helpful for me to get an introduction into college life through that instead of just being thrown into a 4-year university. And I feel like I was able to really feel a lot more appreciation when I actually did enter UNC. And I think that because I was around a lot of people who were much older than me when I first started out at Durham Tech, I really got to see like a maturity that I probably wouldn't have if I just, started at the four-year university.
Yeah, as I was listening to you both, and then, this is just kind of dropping into me that this needs to be lifted up. African American culture in the United States was kind of separate and distinct from white culture because we were forced, like we were not assimilated in the white culture. We had to have our own, communities. We had to have our own churches. We had to, we had to worship with each other. We stuck together, in our own family units because of all the terrorism. And then as we and the church, there was that connection between elder and youth, and our culture was almost like the place that we came to be safe, to share our stories, to learn wisdom from one another, to be healed. And since the civil rights movement, it seems like there's been just more assimilation into white culture, which is, from my opinion, has always been like destitute, because even immigrants that came over had to like leave their culture, whether you were from, Germany or Italy, or if you were Jewish, or if you were from Spain, or, Polish, in order to really move forward in the culture of America, you kind of had to leave that behind, like even change, your last names so that you can get this quote unquote white privilege. But the trade-off, what's the trade-off? It's like anxiety, you know what I'm saying? This is terrible. And I'm seeing the same thing happening inside, African American culture now, to some extent, even if it's not. Let me slow down. So I forgot, this is supposed to be a conscious conversation. I'm just saying everything, the first thing come to my head. So, but it just appears that the culture of materialism, right, is becoming the dominant culture. That's what I want to say. And to the detriment of all of us.
Yeah, I agree. Bringing that up, I feel like it validates a lot of what I've been feeling about this culture that we're in right now. I see, a lot of things on Instagram where, people are posting these luxury items, and they have just expensive things like Birkin bags that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, Lamborghinis and mansions. A lot of these people are probably just renting Airbnbs and renting these cars.
Yep. We were just Michael and I were looking at a documentary today about this culture of wealth. I forgot the name of the documentary, of greed, basically, of greed. And they've talked about like this keeping up with the Joneses, mentality. I don't know if you know I don't know who the Joneses are. I think it's some fictional family. And what they were saying is that, we've moved from, the Joneses used to be like your neighbors, but with the way that social media and television is much, television that people watch, people know more about, say, the Kardashians family than they do their own neighbors. And instead of trying to actually keep up with your neighbors, you're trying to mimic what you're seeing on television. And just like you said, Mashallah, it's not even real. It's fake. What do you think, Rinnie?
Yeah, I think I need to see that documentary, but you're absolutely right. I just feel like I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I don't know the names of any of my neighbors except for like the immediate neighbors, I see people walking and, I'll stop and talk with them, say, oh, you got a pretty dog or something. But yeah, like there's something wrong with that. I mean, if something happened to me, I don't know if any of my neighbors that I would be like, oh, let me go over and ask for help, and yet, it's just, there's this like Western culture, there's like isolation. You have to make community, and it's usually like-minded people. That's why social media is like so powerfully, divisive and stuff, is because everyone lives in their own little bubble, and we are attracted to like-minded people, so we keep ourselves in those bubbles. And yet, for a lot of people, their community is online. And they're keeping up with people through Facebook and social media rather than getting outside and having a neighborhood barbecue and getting to know their immediate neighbors, the people who could actually help them if there was a crisis, or something.
Mm-hmm.
Living in social media community does not provide the mentoring that youth need, from their elders. And our world is so divided, even by ideology, but also by gender and race and age. Like, how many youth are actually interacting with older people and gleaming that wisdom from them as part of their initiation into becoming like a full human being?
Yeah. And also, it's not even, I think at this point, yes. And we could be learning from youth.
Well, going back to actually what you were saying about, communities building together and people knowing each other and knowing your neighbors and things like that. And the way that like cultures of color interact with each other and how that's very different from like Western culture. I feel like I hear a lot about, people from different cultures saying, oh, it's weird that y'all move away from your parents. But in my culture, we, live with our parents for a long time, and we, listen to our elders and our grandparents and interact with them. And when you think about like American culture, it's like, oh, you got to get away from your parents as soon as possible. Like, you have to go as far away from them as you can. And it's just so interesting when I hear those different perspectives. But I feel like it's really helpful when you do have a support system and a team there to like help you in the process of growing up. And beyond that, I feel like we're taught that we have to struggle through everything on our own. But a lot of people are on antidepressants and medication because it's really difficult. And when it comes to like what you were saying about white culture and specifically white American culture, I'm thinking about how there's an abundance of help, really, like when there's businesses, people are hiring their nephews or nieces and they have more resources. So when they tell people of color or Black people to do the same thing, it's like they don't actually have all those things set up for them already. So it's a lot harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't even just gloss over that, Mashallah. Everything you said has a lot of significance. But here's what we're going to do. I am so, I guess, like this coaching and mentoring that will be happening in our program is just a huge piece of what we're doing. It's especially because we're, the plan is to meet weekly, if not bi-weekly for a year. And the thing about it is that we are not doing this as if like in a hierarchy. That is not what this is. Where, the mentors and coaches have all the answers and the entrepreneurs are just empty vessels. No, we are informing each other. We are learning from one another. We are growing together. There's guidance, but it's a mutual exchange that fosters an internal environment of growth for everyone. And so I was writing in the blog, even the mentors and coaches are committed to growing. And, I have a mentor and I have a coach, and Rinnie has a coach. And then Rinnie and I mentor and coach each other. And it's just a constant exchange of learning and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just prioritizing, oh, we gotta, yes, we're gonna do your business plan, and yes, we're gonna, work on your website, and we're gonna figure out this system for your operations. But we're also gonna make space for your emotions and your feelings, and we're gonna make space for if you've got some anxiety or belief system, we're going to figure out what's behind that. We're going to create room to consider, who we are and what we believe. And sometimes, that may be well, today we're going to work on, maybe you need to share your story to get out your feelings. We're going to make room for that. So this is holistic. And we're hoping that the way that we're doing this mentoring and coaching, that we begin to really remove the barriers inside of us that are getting in the way of us being as powerful as possible, because we need that power to bring our services to the world and to not lose sight of what really matters and why we're really doing this. So that's what makes me excited. And we're going to have commercials. We're going to make commercials.
Yeah, we've got like 19 entrepreneurs that we need to put their messaging out about their business and what they're all about.
Yeah. And you know what? Whoever's listening, we are excited about the programming. I started talking so low and monotone and slow. I was putting my own self to sleep, but we are ready to rock and roll. Are we not, Rinnie?
Yes, we are.
You ready, Mashallah?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Mashallah, your afro is going to grow this big by the time the end of the year is out. So anyway,
I was just saying, I feel like that's a wrap. It's Saturday night, and I think I just heard my door open, so I think somebody's in my house. So I'm gonna go see who it is. I believe it's some kids that are, speaking of mentoring, they are coming to spend the night and watch movies with me.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna go and make some food with them and stuff. But
have fun.
Mashallah, you want to take us home? Wrap us up.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. And as always, the revolution begins with dialogue.
All right. Let's rock it.
All right. See y'all later.
See you next time.
This has been a joint podcast of WEBB and Afro Future Productions. For those of you interested in learning more about our work at WEBB, you can find out more at webbsquared.org. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is our conscious conversation. We hope you will subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. Join the Remedy Membership Forum on Patreon to join us monthly for our members-only discussion. That's it for today. Until next week, thanks for listening.
What's underneath the situation you don't realize. So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. The remedy.